All right, good afternoon again. We're delighted to be joined by Philippe Lazzarini, who, as I said, is the humanitarian coordinator and the resident coordinator for the UN in Lebanon, and he's here to give us an overview of the current situation in Lebanon. Welcome.
Wow, thank you, Stefan. I don't know to which extent it will be an overview, but let me talk a little bit about the impact of the Syrian crisis in Lebanon. In fact, I'm here this week. I went in DC yesterday to talk about the impact of the crisis. As we all know, we are 7 years into this crisis. Lebanon in the region is the country which is hosting the highest number of refugees per capita, and it has paid a high burden also of the Syrian crisis, since it has to deal with a number of challenges, not only the demographic challenges, but also, number of socio-economic challenges. Now, at the beginning, and Lebanon, I do believe, has shown to the international community what solidarity and what hospitality is all about. At the beginning of the crisis, host communities have opened their doors, their school, their health center. But 7 years into this crisis, we see more and more, I would say, sign or emergence of what I would call an hospitality fatigue. I would say 2 years ago, when I started in Beirut, there was still quite a lot of anxiety regarding, the refugee presence, the future of this refugee presence. We had quite a number of discussions about, the temporary nature of the stay, and that only the return of the refugees in Syria, once a political solution is found, would be the final, I would say, solution. Today, in a country, there is more of an acknowledgement that the political solution might not be for tomorrow, or at least for tomorrow, we are providing the condition for a real and substantial return of the refugees. And this is the reason why we have today in the countries, call from the politician asking the international community to scale up its support, to beef up its international solidarity, because basically the country cannot cope with the situation alone anymore. If I look at a number of figures, we met a year ago during the London conference, we met again in Brussels, and the objective of this meeting for the neighboring countries was, to ensure multi-year commitment, from the international community, and again, so also a certain number, I would say, of deliveries to come from the host country. 1 year after London, I have to say that, yes, when it comes to resources being made available, the member states or the donors have delivered. In 2016, we are talking about $1.6 billion which have been made available to cope with the situation. But the $1.6 billion, to support the refugees and to support the host communities has not been enough to reverse the tide of further deterioration, further vulnerabilities. And if I look at the overall situation in the country, poverty continues to be on the rise. It has doubled since 2014, and we have about 80-90% of the Syrian refugees living under the line of poverty, but we have also a number of Lebanese living under the line of poverty. And we have also in country, because there is no employment really being created, we have also 500,000 youths who are neither enrolled in vocational training or in school, neither be active in the labor market, and this group of people are considered by both the Lebanese but also its partners from the international community as a possible future taking point if nothing substantial be undertaken to provide them with skills and activities. So I think I will just conclude by saying that if we look at the way the response in country has evolved over the last 7 years. It started by a purely refugee-focused response to broaden it to a response to the host communities, supporting municipalities, supporting a number of infrastructure. And today, the call is to say, well, this is not enough anymore. With this, we can hardly slow down further deterioration. What is really required, is a more macroeconomic approach, and this is the reason why Prime Minister Hariri, when he was in Brussels, was calling for more ambitious, large-scale investment in the country in order, on one hand, to create jobs, and also, beside that, to modernize infrastructure and prepare the country for future possible, reconstruction in the region. The role of the UN in all this, because as you know, we are, diverse, and we have a number of agency funds and programs. We have a peacekeeping mission, we have a political mission in country. You might have heard many times the special coordinator, Sigrid Kaag. We have this wall of Lebanon approach. Our overall objective is to shield the country from a spillover of the situation coming from Syria, number one, and number two, to ensure that stability be maintained during a time of high exposure, to the situation in the region. So, Stefan, I think I will stop here for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you. Carol?
Hi, I'm Carol Landry with Agence France Presse, and on behalf of the UN Correspondents Association, I'd like to welcome you. My question was about the safe zones that are in the news. The details are sketchy, but do you think this is something that might have the potential of encouraging refugee return to Syria?
I think the only thing, number one, I don't know the detail of, the agreement you are talking about, and I know that you were talking about this with Stefan just before. The refugees will go back in country the day they feel confident enough to go to their place of origin. Now, I do not think that talking about a safe zone will be enough to convince a refugee and its family to go back to a place of origin. And the question also after that is, where is the safe zone? Does it cover, the place where, the people currently being in Lebanon are coming from? So I think there are quite a number of questions, but the refugee will go back the day they feel safe enough, and they feel that it's their choice, and they feel that they will be going back, for good.
When you mentioned the macro approach, can you please specify more what you mean exactly by this and how you see it? And my name is Ibtisam Azim, Al-Arabi Jadid newspaper. Thank you.
Yes, when we met in London a year ago, at one point we were also talking about turning this crisis into opportunities for neighboring countries. And we were talking about creating jobs. And we were talking about even 200 to 300,000 jobs at the London conference. But the question is, how do you create, so many jobs in an economy where you have no growth, in an economy where most of its economic activities, export market have slowed down, in an economy where you have no confidence from investor. So basically, how to create, durable, job under these circumstances. Now, one of the conclusions after over the last 7 years is to say, well, this initiative of confidence or investment in a country where there are so many uncertainties, including political uncertainties about the near future, the initiative can come only, from the public institution. By this, the government. So that's the reason why, I mean, the government say, well, what creates job in the country? I mean, today, what's the easiest way? I mean, it's in investing in infrastructures, because in investing in infrastructures, in road rehabilitation, in transportation, in the train, railway, economical zone, this requires quite a lot of, manpower. And through this, I mean, you will try to address two objectives. I mean, provide job in the country, modernize the infrastructure. Now, having said that, to fund, a master plan, because the government is still talking about identifying number of priority projects or infrastructure projects which to be implemented in the coming few years. To fund, this project, you will have to engage also with international financial institutions, such as the newly created, concession facilities that the UN, the Islamic Development Bank, and the World Bank have put in place recently to address important projects for countries such as Jordan and Lebanon. Basically, middle-income countries who do not have access to facilities which normally are aimed at supporting fragile countries.
Matthew?
Matthew Lee, Intercity Press, on behalf of the Free UN Coalition for Access. Thanks for the briefing. I wanted to ask you about that global concessional financing facility. There's been this question for at least a couple of years about middle-income countries not being able to get, even as impacted, but not all of them are Islamic countries. So I'm wondering, is this facility, given that it's a partnership with the Islamic Bank, is it limited to only countries that are predominantly Islamic, or is this the World Bank's attempt to solve the problem of middle-income countries that are impacted by refugees but can't get concessional financing, or is there some other solution on the horizon? And the other question is, I'll bet that you've seen this BBC investigative piece about people recruiting refugees in Lebanon to sell their organs. Did you see that? And I wanted to know whether the UN is aware and what it's doing about that. I mean, the guy goes on the record and says that he sold people's eyes and livers. So what is the UN doing about that? Thanks.
Thank you, Matthew. On the first question, I think we have to go back a little bit at the origin of the initiative. I mean, it started with an observation saying the traditional, development system will be overstretched in middle-income countries with such high, I would say, demand. And that's when, the president of the World Bank and the previous SG have commissioned a working group to look into what could be the additional new instrument, to address some of the need of middle-income countries affected by refugee crisis. And that's when this concessional facility, came out. Initially, it was focused for the neighboring countries of the Syrian crisis, and primarily at that time we were talking about Jordan and Lebanon. Now, during the migration conference in September last year, the decision has been taken to transform this facility into a global facility, meaning by this it should be made accessible for any middle-income country affected by a refugee crisis, which cannot, tap into alternative concession facilities. The starting point was that Lebanon and Jordan are not an IDA eligible country, for this soft loan, and that's the reason why, this global fund has been put in place. Is it only for countries in the region? Not anymore. It used to be. It started with this because the thinking came from the MENA region, but it's not anymore the case. On the article, on BBC, yes, I saw it just before coming to New York. It's definitely, concerning, this kind of trafficking. I have no idea about the scope of what has been reported, but I have indeed requested that, we have now a better understanding of what's going on. As you know, a year ago, we were also talking about other type of human trafficking. It was not the organ trafficking, for which, number of agency funded program were very much hands-on and have worked very closely with the authorities. Now, once I have more understanding on what's going on with the organ trafficking, definitely we will look at reacting on that. Thank you.
Ibsen, you had a follow-up. Go ahead.
You were talking about the obstacle. Just to clarify, so is it mainly financial obstacles, or the Lebanese government in their planning are also missing some things there? Thank you.
I think we have to look at, there are a few elements in your question. As you know, last time I met you, the government was not functioning. Today we have a government, we have a functioning government in Lebanon. For the first time also, we have, the first time in 12 years, we have a national budget which have been adopted, which is also a starting point, because, you need a national budget if you want to have discussion about what should be in the future some of the priority investment. Now, today, the Prime Minister and the government have initiated a discussion about, how to revitalize, the economy, based on the observation that if we continue the way we have, handled, the impact of the crisis, there is a risk in the future, of implosion. And this is the reason why, there have been a call about, more needs to be done. So the observation is to say, focusing just in addressing the need of the refugees or the host communities, and when I say the host communities, is a number of municipalities in Akkar, in the north, or in the Bekaa Valley, is not enough anymore. We have a skyrocketing unemployment in the country. We have 500,000 youth at risk who have absolutely no opportunities, and we know that the political environment being the one Lebanon is going through, full of uncertainties, not only because of the internal politics, but also because of its exposure in the region. The only way to try to turn the tide is to have some, I would say, investment ambitions, and this can be led only by, a public institution at the beginning. But to be successful, obviously, the government will have to agree on what the priorities are, where should we start, and in order to engage with number of international financial institutions, there will be also discussion about, some of the expectation for the soft loan to be made available. Now, in the mind of the government, they will be looking at different options. One are the concession facilities we were just talking about before, and there are various pots for the concession facilities, but they will also be looking at if some non-traditional countries, non-traditional for the region and for Lebanon, could also be interested in championing investment in some public sector in the country. So that's a little bit where the thinking is all about.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Philippe. Thank you.
Thank you.